Imagine for a moment existing in a world that is rather ordinary. The linear progression of time, a singular existence, a life that you presumably forget about when you leave. And imagine being in that world where it's predominantly centered around consumerism, working for somebody else, not being particularly special, but being useful and valuable in some important way that aligns with your skills, your work ethic, and the children that you produce. There is no magic, really. There is religion, and depending on your belief systems, you could be funneled into one of the major world religions, where you will see the world in a certain way and view yourself and your purpose here through a certain lens. And you may believe in some form of so-called magic or mystery or expanse beyond your humanity. But in your everyday world, when you're driving to work or on the train or walking, you're not expecting to see anything extraordinary. And as you exist in a world like that, you come across a book that tells you that the world you have always known about is just one of many, overseen by a hierarchy of non-human beings and entities, some of which terrify those who they visit, including soiling their clothes because their bowels empty suddenly and forcibly due to the sheer terror of witnessing these so-called beings. And you read an account of one particular person that was taken, disappeared right in front of witnesses' eyes, mysteriously vanishes in thin air, who apparently goes on a journey to personally observe and to see with their own eyes a system behind the weather, behind suffering, behind violence, behind pleasure, prestige, favor. And in this witness testimony, you read about these marvelous crystal castles with flames at the entranceway that never die, as well as scents and majestic mountains that would defy what an ordinary world would allow for. And in this observation deck, this witness would learn about the structure of humanity and how humans had been corrupted through the hidden secrets of that which was never supposed to be exposed, and that there were injustices conducted with women and some of these beings, and the offspring which were developed apparently were horrifying to those that were keeping watch over humanity. To those who had created humanity. Well, if you are an ordinary human existing in a world that is average, where nothing magical really happens, when you read this testimony, your mind is going to have a hard time parsing it. Is it literal? Is it figurative? Were there psychedelics involved? Sleep deprivation? Is this an allegory? What's going on? Until you start to awaken and you start to understand that there are repeating cycles that don't make sense. If you know, you know about the floods, the mud floods, the lost ancient civilizations, the technology, the rumors of there being an earth inside of our earth, which doesn't make sense if it's filled with lava, and ancient civilizations buried under ice, heavily guarded, stargates, portals, and retrieved potential ancient tech under the guise of drug wars or oil wars. And when you start to expand your view beyond just being an ordinary human existing in an average, blasé world that just lives and breathes and works and dates and mates, and has kids, retires, and then loses their sensory input. We get deaf, we lose our taste, our sight goes, our body starts shutting down. And then we pass. And you read a book, like an ancient sacred text that tells you that humans used to live a lot longer in the several hundred years amongst these things that they call giants. And you think to yourself, what world was that? Was it this one? Really? Was it another one? Imagine for a moment being a human waking up to there being other worlds, period. I remember early on in my spiritual awakening journey when I really started going quantum style. I was in Southeast Asia. This was after my death experience. And life was really odd after that and continued to be so. One of the odd things was landing in a different version of the Singapore airport that I had landed in just a month previously, maybe 2 months by that point. As well as opening up a portal in Singapore. A portal in space and time. Sitting outside this busy shopping center, listening to a musician play a beautiful melody and imagining a fractal opening up from me through the space-time continuum to somebody else, linking us together for some reason that I felt was important then, but I don't so much now. And similarly feeling when I went back to my hotel, opening up another portal to release some of the bondage that I felt was pulling me through dimensions, all intuitively. Nobody set me down and trained me. I didn't get a certificate, course credit, go to a retreat. It seemed to be this natural inclination, like a cat giving birth, who knows that there's something happening, but doesn't understand necessarily that they're about to birth out a kitten or several. They just instinctively find a dark, sheltered spot and protect themselves until nature runs its course, their body moving in postures, them crying out at certain points when it's overwhelming. And at the end of it, they produce life. They didn't go to college. The cats, I mean, to learn about giving birth and what was going to happen to them. They just did it. When I was in Dallas, one of the last times I tried to open a portal, I had pulled over on the side of this green belt that was rarely used. I would see somebody there occasionally, but most of the time when I was there, I'd see nobody. And I walked into a part that was wooded, And it was about a couple-minute walk. I was standing in the trees, and I practiced opening a portal. And this time, my world started changing around me. The trees started turning into the jungle. I heard monkeys. Thick atmosphere started rolling in like the humidity was being changed. The sound of the insects, the cicadas changed. And that's when I got very frightened. It felt like I was entering into a landscape that reminded me of Bali, Indonesia. But intuitively, it felt like the time was in the past. A time that I didn't know if I knew anybody there. Because in the present day life, I would have just been born. Would I be stepping through a portal into a year that I was being born as an adult? Would I have clothes? Did I have money? Just the sheer act of thinking about these things pulled me right back. The snapback effect. I was right back where I started. I'll never forget that. Because I wanted to explore, and yet I was frightened. Even though I didn't feel frightened, my body did. How was that possible? I would continue asking these questions and exploring parallel worlds. But the idea of portals was something I held on to and never talked about with anybody. Because how could you say to anybody who lives in a world where portals don't exist that you opened a portal? Years later, I would be reading the Book of Enoch, which I've already described some of it. A text that has been excluded in many aspects of Christianity, but is still taken seriously in some sects of it. And in the Book of Enoch, where Enoch himself views as a human the angelic realms, the heavens, the hells, the different worlds. one of the first things that stood out to me, other than the Watchers, was that Enoch describes portals. Portals in the sky, where stars are positioned in certain alignments that he thought was very important, so he wrote them down, took note of them, or perhaps just memorized it. He makes a point to say he documented it, but the details of that I'm not quite sure. And he saw portals to the gates of heaven, and many portals now. This word, when you think about it, because it's been translated right, could mean a lot of different things. Could mean door, could mean threshold, it could mean even a window, just a passing point. And in the world that I come from, it certainly, to many readers, does not mean a portal like you disappear into and enter into another realm. And in this journey of awakening, we come to realize that language is really fascinating because it holds the keys to symbolic memories, concepts, experiences that can map on literally, figuratively, metaphorically, analogously. And so it presents this interesting case study of how the mind works. For example, if I told you that there were whistleblowers that apparently worked at a official institution, shall we say, without naming the particular one, where not just one, but a couple of them have independently come out and said that they witnessed firsthand and were set to guard a Stargate. Would that mean anything to you? What is a Stargate? If you don't know, I'm sure you have a guess. Could it be a portal? Could it be something else? If you have no meaning, how would you fit that in to your entire framework? Because what I have found about the mind as it awakens is that when it doesn't know something, it can't categorize it. And when it doesn't have a category based on a name that it recognizes or has been exposed to through education, storytelling, content creation, things that are movies and culture. You see the point. If there is no semantic meaning, then it has no meaning. It's actually deeply uncomfortable when you consider this. Truth. You only know what has been given to you. At least the mind. There are deeper truths that you can know without anybody giving it to you, literally or figuratively. One of those for me was first hearing about the Book of Enoch before I had a copy in my hands. And I had this feeling that there was some importance about it. And I grew up Christian, was never exposed to it. And when I heard about it, without any other information, just the name itself caused me to feel there's something important here for me to learn. But it would be years before I was gifted a copy of this book. What truths have been buried for you that you've heard about that stand out to you as needing deeper exploration? If your mind was ready, for example, to read or learn about portals, actually being in our everyday world, how would that stir you in relation to the tugging of your cord, where your soul is trying to get you to expand further into the unknown? That is where perhaps your next step is. Until next time.